Welcome to the video on dissolution similarity requirements. So, for the generic formulations, dissolution similarity is required, and dissolution similarity is required to be demonstrated with the reference formulation. Also, for reference formulation, to get the biwaiver for lower strength, the dissolution similarity is required. Dissolution similarity is also required to be shown or demonstrated for post-approval changes for lower strength and also for variation in the formulation and manufacturing procedures. So the topic is very important considering the requirements for dissolution similarity. It is also known as comparative dissolution profiling or CDP, or sometimes it is also called as the multimedia dissolution similarity demonstration. I have made a video on multimedia dissolution also, so you can visit that video. In the present video, we will talk regarding the dissolution similarity requirements. When you can say that the dissolution is similar and what are the key requirements? Because if you fulfill the key requirements, then only the regulatory body will accept the dissolution similarity data, and based on that they will approve the formulation. When similarity demonstration is not required, if the formulation shows more than 85% release within or at 15 minutes, then it is considered to have very rapid type of dissolution, and that time the dissolution similarity demonstration is not required. For the formulations which show very rapid dissolution for reference formulation and also for the test formulation, those are considered to have similar dissolution, and that's why the statistical calculation are not required. The dissolution similarity is not required to be demonstrated. For the immediate release type of formulation containing highly soluble drug substances belonging to BCS class 1 or 3, if dissolution is very rapid, that time dissolution similarity is not required. Also, for some of the formulations which are low soluble or which are containing the low soluble, poorly soluble APIs, but based on to the dose and formulation characteristics, if the dissolution is very rapid, then dissolution similarity is not required. Now, when the dissolution similarity is required and when it is must, see if the dissolution is rapid, like 85% is getting released in 30 minutes or in 45 minutes or 60 minutes, that time the dissolution profiling is done and comparative dissolution profile and dissolution similarity demonstration is required. The dissolution is considered to be slow if the dissolution of 85% is not taking at 30 minutes also. If resolution is above 85% at 30 minutes, you can say it as a rapid dissolution, but still you have to show the dissolution similarity. What are the requirements for showing the dissolution similarity? Before going to the statistical calculation, before going to the model dependent, independent similarity demonstration, some key requirements are there, and without fulfilling these key requirements, the dissolution similarity cannot be demonstrated. So always remember that the data which is going for the dissolution similarity demonstration should be of 12 units. Many of the times 6 unit data is also considered, but it is for the research phase, and 12 unit data is required for regulatory filing. Then medias, 3 media should be there, and these 3 medias are considered based on to the physiological pH profile like 0.1 normal HCl or simulated gastric fluid without enzymes. Then media of pH 4.5 made of acetate buffer, pH 6.8 phosphate buffer media, or simulated intestinal fluid without enzymes. If your QC release media is not out of these three medias, then another media, that is fourth media, will be QC release media. If the QC release media is different from the physiological pH range medias of 0.1, 4.5 and 6.8. Dissolution conditions should be standard. QC dissolution conditions are generally used for this multimedia dissolution or comparative dissolution. But for some of the formulations or for some of the products, the standard dissolution conditions are required. Sometimes the regulatory authorities ask for the data on standard dissolution conditions and also on the dissolution conditions used for the QC release. Generally, the surfactant is not utilized for proving the CDP, but if the surfactant is required to be used, then its level and surfactant selection should be justified. This happens for insoluble type of APIs where without SLS or for example without surfactant the dissolution is not happening. Then surfactants can be utilized, and at that time generally the regulatory bodies ask data with different level of surfactants and without surfactant also. Time points. So for time points for comparative dissolution profiling, I have made a separate video and I have shown here. So this video you can see, this video is separately made for time points, but generally consider the three minimum time points excluding 0. Based on the 85% drug release time point, you can select the different time points. Only one time point should be considered after achieving the 85% of the drug release. For some of the regulatory bodies, it is either of the formulation like test or reference. For some of the regulatory bodies, it is only test product or it is only the reference product. But either test or reference, you should consider whichever is coming 85%. So the next time point after 85% should be considered. So if rapid dissolution is there and 85% release is happening at 30 minutes, then consider the time points like 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 and 45 minutes. Also we can go for 60 minutes, but you should consider only one time point after 85% release, and based on that time point you will select the initial time points. Generally 5-minute time point and 10-minute time point are disregarded. But if the formulation shows 85% drug release at 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that time 10-minute time point should be considered. So 10 and 15 can be considered as initial time point, and CV criteria can be applied for 10 and 15 minutes. Generally 5-minute time point is disregarded because 5-minute dissolution depends on the disintegration time and also on the capsule opening time. So 5-minute time point will have higher variation and should be excluded. Then relative standard deviation should be not more than 20% at initial time point, and RSD of not more than 10% should be there for later time points. So always fix your initial time point and later time point. If the dissolution is happening around 85% at 30 minutes, then consider 15 minutes as your initial time point. So based on the 85% release, you should select your initial time point. Then different methods are there for proving the dissolution similarity. Those are classified as model dependent and model independent. So generally F1, F2 criteria is considered, and if the variation is more, that means the formulation showing a variability or RSD more than 20%, and if it is not fitting the RSD requirement or coefficient of variation requirement, then F2 by bootstrapping is done. MSD method is also used, and sometimes PBPK modeling is performed. So we will see the best practices for making the CDP or showing the dissolution similarity requirements. So dissolution media and conditions should be always a standard, like 50 rpm for paddle, 100 rpm for basket, and media volume should not be more than 1000 ml. Generally, the media volume should be 900 ml or 500 ml based on to the dissolution method development. 12 units should be used from each batch and each strength along with the reference formulation. Perform dissolution on 10 units or all the strengths. Time point selected should be based on to the time of for 85% drug release for either of the formulation, whether it is test or reference. Then appropriate time points should be selected, and these time points should be suitably spaced. Appropriate initial and later time points should be selected. Coefficient of variation and relative reference deviation or standard deviation, you can say reference to the initial time points. So these are required to be considered. Global product and regulatory requirement considerations. Always consider whether your product meets to the global requirement or not. So by the practice of standard dissolution conditions and standard dissolution practice, if you follow, it is certain that the dissolution similarity will be proved and there will not be any query onto the dissolution similarity key requirements. Then always do the comparison for test versus RLD, that is B strength. Also test to test comparison in different strengths. Test B strength to lower strength. This is very important and very critical, because if you work for the biweaver, then you have to show the similarity of your dissolution of lower strength or Weber strength with the B strength. Then B strength to lower strength in multiple units. Sometimes due to zinc differences, the lower strength dissolution is faster compared to the higher strength. That time multiple units can be used, and based on the zinc differences, it is justified in multiple units dissolution and compared with the PE strength. So these are some of the best practices. I hope I have covered the topic. If you have any question, please comment and I will try to answer your queries. Thank you for watching the video, and I request you to share and subscribe this video, this channel. Share the videos with your friends so that everyone can get benefited for such type of information. Thank you.